Good evening. Hope you all had a good Wednesday. Today the market had a great day, as the Fed kept rates unchanged and technology led the way, as the Big Four tech CEOs testified before the House Judiciary subcommittee on antitrust. The Dow performed the worst, posting a gain of 0.61%. The S&P 500 gained 1.24%, and the Nasdaq gained the best, 1.35%. This morning, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said, quote, "As of now, we're very far apart," end quote, when regarding the Democrats' and Republicans' talks on the coronavirus relief bill. The Trump administration pushed forward the idea of a short-term plan to provide only enhanced unemployment insurance and a federal eviction moratorium while the two sides battle out the details. The Democrats have reportedly rejected the idea. The CEO of JetBlue warned that there could be a, quote, "day of reckoning," end quote, for the airline industry if there is not an extension of the CARES Act. He said, quote, "As we get to the end of the first CARES Act period through to September, we're still going to be at a fraction of our normal levels, and so airlines are going to have to reset. It has the potential to cause a significant amount of job losses in the industry, and an extension of the CARES Act for the industry would prevent that," end quote. He noted that demand is currently at 25 to 30% when compared to pre-pandemic levels. He then said, quote, "We all agree that we'll see a recovery at some point. I think people instinctively want to travel. There's a lot of pent-up demand for travel. Lots of friends and families they put off seeing. The question is, how do we bridge to that point? Depending on a vaccine and the success and distribution of a vaccine, somewhere in the second half of next year, I'm hopeful that this worm turns." Shares of Eastman Kodak skyrocketed and are up more than 1,000% this week, as President Donald Trump announced a deal with Kodak to produce ingredients and generic drugs in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Donald Trump said, quote, "Our 33rd use of the Defense Production Act will mobilize Kodak to make generic, active pharmaceutical ingredients. We'll bring back our jobs, and we will make America the world's premier medical manufacturer and supplier," end quote. The company said it will expand existing facilities in Rochester, New York, and St. Paul, Minnesota, under a new Kodak Pharmaceuticals arm. Kodak CEO said, quote, "By leveraging our vast infrastructure, deep expertise in chemicals manufacturing, and heritage of innovation and quality, Kodak will play a critical role in the return of a reliable American pharmaceutical supply chain," end quote. Today, the Federal Reserve had a meeting regarding their plans moving forward and to provide us with insights into the current state of the economy. Notably, the central bank kept its benchmark overnight lending rate anchored near zero, which was expected. The statement provided by the Fed said that we can expect these low rates until they are, quote, "confident that the economy has weathered recent events and is on track to achieve its maximum employment and price stability goals," end quote. The Federal Open Market Committee, which sets monetary policy, expressed its commitment to maintain its bond purchases and the array of lending and liquidity programs. Powell shared his dim thoughts, saying, quote, "Following sharp declines, economic activity and employment have picked up somewhat in recent months, but remain well below their levels at the beginning of the year. Weaker demand and significantly lower oil prices are holding down consumer price inflation. Overall, financial conditions have improved in recent months, in part reflecting policy measures to support the economy and the flow of credit to U.S. households and businesses," end quote. Powell did say that, quote, "We are committed to using our full range of tools to support our economy in this challenging environment," end quote. Regardless of what the Fed can do, Powell said, quote, "The path of the economy will depend significantly on the course of the virus," end quote. The committee also said it would extend dollar liquidity swaps and temporary repo operations through March 31st, 2021. The goal of these swap lines are to keep U.S. dollars flowing to entities, including global central banks, in need of the currency. Regarding the markets, Powell said, quote, There's nothing that's going on in the markets right now that raises any concerns. We want them to be there as a backstop for the markets, end quote. The median Fed estimate for GDP this year was a decline of 6.5%. Central bankers expect growth to improve to 5% in 2021 and 3.5% in 2022. Other notable information is that the Fed has not considered buying stocks so far. They do not see inflation being a problem in the future and warn that they are more concerned about deflationary pressures. On top of this, Powell also called for more action from Congress, but did say that the Fed still has some tools left in its toolbox. The only sector that ended in the red was telecommunications, but only by a minuscule amount. Almost every sector gained more than 1%. Financials, industrials, oil and gas, and technology rose near or more than 2%. The table shows the same story. Everyone rose by a large margin today. L Brands, which owns Victoria's Secret and Bed Bath & Body Works, had their shares increase by the most in the S&P 500 today, as they skyrocketed upwards by 35.36%. This comes after the company got an upgrade from JP Morgan, and second quarter apparel sales appear to be stronger than expectations. AMD, which is the large semiconductor company, continued on its torrid pace, as shares rose by another 12.54%. Shares rose as AMD beat on earnings estimates yesterday and recorded a double beat with very strong revenue growth. On top of this, Bank of America raised their price target to $100 and maintained their buy rating. Seagate Technologies, which is a cloud and data storage company, was the worst performing company as shares fell 8.77%. This comes as Seagate missed on both revenue and EPS estimates. Revenue did not miss by much and did manage to increase by 6.3% on a yearly basis. Automatic Data Processing, which is a provider of human resources management software, had shares fall 6.5%. This comes after the company reported seemingly strong earnings this morning. Otherwise, I cannot find any other news. Investors must have been expecting more, or some poor guidance must have been provided on the company's earnings call. Getting into earnings, we'll start off with Boeing, ticker symbol BA, which is the large producer of airplanes, rockets, satellites, and telecommunications equipment. Their earnings this morning were dismal. Non-GAAP EPS missed estimates by a terrible $2.26, as they reported a loss of $4.79 per share. Revenue was down 25%, as they managed to still record revenue of $11.81 billion, but missed estimates by a whole $1.14 billion. To add more gasoline onto the fire, they missed operating margin by a wide degree. CEO David Calhoun said, quote, "These past few months have been unlike anything we've seen. The reality is the pandemic's impact on the aviation sector continues to be severe," end quote. Shares ended the day down 2.83%. Next up, we have Shopify, ticker symbol SHOP, which is a rapidly growing e-commerce company. This morning, Shopify reported incredible earnings. They managed to beat non-GAAP EPS estimates by astounding $1.03, as they finished the quarter with a gain of $1.05 per share. Revenue grew an outrageous 97.3% on a yearly basis, as they had revenue of $714.34 million and beat estimates by $202.78 million. Shares rose by nearly 7%. Next up, we have General Electric, ticker symbol GE, which is a company that produces a wide variety of industrial products. GE had disappointing earnings this morning. Non-GAAP EPS came in at a loss of 15 cents per share, which was lower than estimates by 6 cents. Revenue was $17.75 billion, which did beat estimates by $480 million, but still fell by 38.4% on a yearly basis. Free cash flow was in the red for GE, but the CEO did say they plan to reach positive free cash flow in 2021. The CEO said they are not in a position where they will need to raise more capital, but did say, quote, "Clearly this was a tough quarter," end quote, and the, quote, "macro environment could deteriorate further before recovering," end quote. Shares ended in the red by 4.35%. Next up, we have Spotify, ticker symbol SPOT, which is the leader for music streaming. Spotify had an EPS of a loss of 1.91 euros per share, but did grow revenue by 13.2% on a yearly basis. Revenue totaled 1.89 billion euros, but missed estimates, albeit by a minuscule 40 million euros. The company's gross margin came in stronger than expected, and total active monthly users came in on the high end of guidance. Shares fell 1.84%, but are still up by a large amount on the year. Lastly, we have General Motors, ticker symbol GM, which is the automotive company that owns Buick, Cadillac, GMC, and Chevrolet. GM posted slightly positive earnings this morning. Non-GAAP EPS was a loss of 50 cents per share, which beat estimates by a huge $1.28. Revenue missed by an insignificant $70 million as revenue fell 53.4% on a yearly basis and finished the quarter at $16.8 billion. Shares dropped 1.67%. Looking forward towards tomorrow, we'll get earnings from Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple, just to name a few. It will be a big day to say the least. That is all that I have for tonight. Hope you all have a nice rest of your night.